If you don't mind, I think that I am entitled to a little bit of an explanation of what is going on here.
Welcome to this latest edition of the Cranky Curmudgeon's Corner. My name is Paul Thomas, and this episode we're going to look at the reasons why we believe Trump got reelected. So with us tonight is Pat Chesbrough and Doug Heinrich. Doug, thanks for joining us. We have had our period of despair, anger, grief, and depression that overwhelmed our cognitive consciousness after learning the election results. So maybe it is time now we crawl back into the world of acceptance and begin to look at what happened. While it is the mission of this episode to look at a wide variety of contributions that form the current American political consciousness, we hope to go to detail into that through the rest of the questioning, but I want to start out by generally asking what you think is the primary reason the electorate decided to go with Trump instead of Kamala. Pat, I'm sure you thought about this question because you've had it for a while. Primary reason in your mind?
I think complacency is the primary reason. I think the whole idea that I think we've been fed narratives for a number of years. I think we're believing those narratives. And one of the narratives is we're better than anybody else and all those kinds of things. And certainly Trump bought into that. And I just think, I think he won because people are complacent. They're not engaged. They're just sitting there. They're taking whatever the popular somebody's saying, and they're saying that must be the truth, so I'm not going to worry about it, and I'm just going to go ahead and vote for the fool.
My brother described it as laziness. The word he used was laziness, that the people were just too lazy to find out what was going on because it was too hard. Doug, complacency is what Pat says. You have any other thing to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, there are multiple factors here, but I think if I had to hone in on one thing, and if you step back from the up and down from one election to another and look at the big patterns, it seems to me that we're in the middle of a shift of the pendulum that's been coming for a long time. And I think the last big shift, if you look back to the turn of the 20th century, for decades, the accepted rhetoric was free, laissez-faire economy, what's good for business is good for America. People bought into that. The robber barons, they bought into it until it became increasingly implausible as the average guy was suffering more and more. And so you began to see the pushback. You began to see unionism. You began to see those kind of things. Finally, with the Great Depression, the total hypocrisy of that view became so overwhelming that we saw the major shift with FDR, and he did something dramatically different. And if you take away the nefarious qualities, he has a lot in common with Donald Trump. He spoke to the people in a very simple way. It's fireside chats. He did very concrete things very fast, and people felt the effect. Now, I think it was a pretty good effect all in all. Since then, however, it seems to me that particularly since the post-war economic boom, which made everybody feel good, started to die away, you have seen the average person feel like they're losing ground. And the idealistic rhetoric of the left, and believe me, I'm on the left, I'm there, but I think our rhetoric has become increasingly detached from the reality of the average American. And I think it has finally gotten to where it seems absolutely hypocritical and implausible. And the left has focused more on increasing focus on special interests. And they say they're going to deliver for the public, but because the left is as beholden to big money as the right, they don't actually do anything. Look at healthcare. Right? I mean, they've been screaming about the need for more equitable health care, but they don't do it even when they're in power. Why? Because they, like everybody else, are owned by big pharma. They're owned by insurance companies. So I think people finally began.
But also, Doug, the message to us was send us more money. We need this more money.
Yeah, and they throw money at things and nothing seems to change. And I think that I think that we miss the point, those of us on the left, if we just focus on how stupid the Trump voters are. Because the thing that's undeniable is he won increasing margins in virtually every demographic group. It's not just the MAGA people, it's not just the nutcases out there who voted for him. He got a bigger share of labor, he got a bigger share of minorities, he got a bigger, you name it. And that tells you something. I think there's a tremendous disillusionment. And I think unless the people on the left hear that and start figuring out how they're going to make the average American feel like they're actually looking out for their interests, I think we're in serious trouble for a long time.
One discussion topic I had with an Alaskan friend was the influence of social media, in particular, the far right websites where the kooks, her word and mine, spend all their waking hours staring at the screen, which spew out QAnon style nonsense. The end result is that a community is established to which these folks feel connected, and that is a significant portion of Trump's base. I don't deny that there are online communities that they exist. My question to you is, how much influence did this group have on the election? I heard an NPR story today while I was driving about a guy who wrote a book about the internet, Facebook, and social media, and he seemed to believe that it had like a whole bunches of influence. Doug, do you think that?
I think it had some influence. Again, I think we exaggerate it because my suspicion is the vast bulk of people who are susceptible to that would have ended up voting for Trump anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you have many people who were, wildly excited about the Democratic Party who got persuaded by social media to go the other direction. So I don't think it cost us the election. I think I think what it did is made some of the people in the Trump camp just much more entrenched because they, were in kind of an echo chamber where they just kept hearing more and more of the same shit. But so do people on the left, right? I mean, we're all in our own little bubbles now is what's happened. And I think that's a real big part of the problem, that nobody's talking to anybody else except people that agree with them.
Yeah, there's a huge industry of leftist podcasts.
Absolutely.
Out there. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of them, where they spew out their propaganda.
That's right. I mean, I think it's a problem on both. I think it's part of our culture right now that because we have so many ways of disseminating these special viewpoints, that people lock into the ones that they find to their liking, and they don't hear anything else. So I think it's very hard for people to have a chance to change their mind, to consider other positions. I think there's less and less of that on both sides. I really do.
Pat, social media, how influential do you think they were this time?
I certainly agree that people get into their own little niches and just follow those. And I think we have lost the ability to have reasoned discourse everywhere. So it's not just there. I mean, you can't really have a good discussion and listen to both sides without people yelling or being obnoxious and it's demonstrated by it was certainly demonstrated by the now president, that you just be nasty to people and call people names and those kinds of things. And we've devolved into that state that the kids can't do it either. I mean, we're not teaching people anymore to be able to talk with each other in reasonable and reasoned kind of way. So you can listen to somebody else. Because what happens is you just get mad when you start hearing what they're saying, and then you tune it out, and it's really hard to get through the maze. So I think you're right. I think this whole idea that we are just going to the people that we agree with is probably accurate and probably doesn't help the situation. I'm not sure that's why Kamala lost or anything like that. I would say this, though, and I hear the whole argument about the Democrats aren't talking about the things that matter to people. What did Kamala say? She said, I'm going to help you buy a house. I'm going to help you start a business. I'm going to help you take care of your kids. Those are things. Why nobody listened to that? And, you know, and if you talk about healthcare, I agree about healthcare, but we do have ACA, which has more people in it now than it did before. And it's not perfect, but nobody, you know, our big problem is we have insurance companies and nobody's willing to take them on. And I agree with that. Neither the Democrats nor the Republicans are willing to take on the idiocy that we have a middleman deciding what your health care can be and who's going to pay for it.
Doug, before we leave this question, I want you to comment on Pat's latest statement about Kamala saying that we had, you know, we were doing these things. We're going to help you build a house. We're going to help you with this. We're going to help you with all the things that she said that were going to be beneficial. That didn't land like I think everybody on that side hoped for. Why is that, do you think?
Well, I think it's because the people on the Democratic Party have lost the credibility in the eyes of the public in the same way that the Republicans lost it in the time of the Depression. They kept saying, you know, if you take care of big business, if you deregulate, everybody benefits. Nobody believed that anymore because everybody was not benefiting. And I think if you look at what's happened to the average American with flat wages, with healthcare expenses going up, housing going up, and I'm not saying that, I mean, I actually think the Democrats did some very good things, but I don't think it has any credibility. I think the gap between the rhetoric and the reality has gotten so much that the pendulum swung and people aren't believing it anymore. I don't think people believed Kamala when she said those things. Because where have they been for the last 4 years?
But the other part of it is things are better than they were 4 years ago. That message hasn't come out. Wages are up. They're not, maybe not enough up.
Yeah,
I mean, all that stuff, but wages are up. Manufacturing is up.
People aren't dying from the pandemic.
All those things.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree with you, except I think if you look at the big trend, we've already lost the credibility. We lost the credibility more than 4 years ago. We lost the credibility decades ago. I mean, this is how Ronald Reagan got popular. I mean, I think that I think you have to look at a much bigger trend. It takes decades to lose credibility. And I think it took the Republicans from the 1890s to the 1920s to lose it. And it's taken us from the late 70s, early 80s to now to lose it. But I think we've lost it. And nobody.
Well, I look at the Senate Judiciary Committee. Sheldon Whitehouse is one guy on that committee who wants to get something done. But I forget the other guy's name, the chair of the committee, has done nothing. Now look at all the horrible things the Supreme Court has done, and the Democrats were chairing that committee, and they have done nothing to haul that in.
Right.
The 14th Amendment they disregarded. The presidential immunity is atrocious. They're saying that you can be criminal, just call it an official act. So I agree. All right, moving on here.
And I'm not saying the Democrats, and I agree with Pat. I mean, I think there's been some very good things done, but I don't think anybody is believing it anymore. I think it's a rhetorical loss. We've lost the rhetorical battle. And even if we're doing good things, we get no credit for it because, and there are things that I don't think it's anybody's fault, but it is very hard for people to buy a house today if you don't own one already. I mean, there's just a whole bunch of stuff. Healthcare, is out of control. So I just think that the average person's looking and saying, we've heard this talk before. We just don't think it has any credibility anymore. I think that's where we've lost it. And my own feeling is a decent Republican candidate would have won by a much bigger landslide than Donald Trump. I think Trump won in spite of Donald Trump, not because of Donald Trump.
Well, you said we lost the rhetorical battle. The Democrats have lost the rhetorical battle. The Republican battle cry this election was let's inflict as much pain as we can on the people we hate. There was really nothing else besides that.
Right.
All right, moving on here. I believe that both campaigns provided the public with an accurate portrayal of the true characters of the respective candidates. Do you think Trump won because he ran a good campaign and Kamala lost because she ran a bad one? Is it, I mean, what you just said, Pat, was that we heard Kamala speak. Kamala was addressing issues that would help the middle class. That was her campaign. Trump's campaign was, I'm going to throw all those journalists and everybody else in jail because they don't like me. So was it I guess the question I'm asking is, were the campaigns the reason why Trump won and Kamala lost? Doug?
Well, I personally think, under the circumstances, Kamala ran a great campaign.
I do too.
I think, given the way she got in, how late she got in, I also think the sad truth of the matter is that a woman can't win presidency in this country right now. And whether that, what's that?
Forever.
Maybe forever. Certainly, I don't think in our lifetime. Honestly,
well, we're going to die and time will move on. So let's
right. But anyway, I think Kamala did the best she could do under the circumstances. I just think she was doomed. Again, partly because nobody believes the rhetoric anymore. I mean, I think she said all the right things, and I think she meant them. I mean, I think she was a credible person. So yeah, I think she did a fine job. I think Trump knows how to appeal to the frustration and rage of a good chunk of the American population, and that they love the cruelty, they love the nastiness, they love all of that, and he casts it as us against them, and they buy it. And you know, everybody on the left, everybody with an education is simply the enemy, and I think that's what he goes with. It sells.
Well, that's kind of answering the last question, but we'll get back. You can expound on that when we get to the last question. But Pat, good campaign, bad campaign? Does that have any difference in how elections or election results manifest?
I don't think so, probably, but I think, going back to what we said before, I think the decades of narrative that the Republicans have pushed, not just decades, but hundreds of years. Women are weak. Black women are stupid. We have to hate people. It's their fault that you can't afford a house. It's their fault that such and such happens, and you take one example of an immigrant, an illegal immigrant who kills somebody, and that becomes more important than somebody who plows into 14 people in New Orleans. And they have been masterful in making the narrative fit what they want to do, which is, just like you said, hate other people. Blame other people for anything that's wrong with you. It's not my fault. It's never my fault. It's their fault. There's nothing I can do about it. So I need a savior. And that's what, Trump, the big bully, is a savior. And that's what, I think that's exactly what happened. And so it didn't have anything to do with Kamala Harris. And I agree with you about the woman. Now Mexico has a woman. India's had a woman. Certainly New Zealand, England, Ireland.
Every advanced country, every developed country has had at least one woman leader except us.
Yeah. And we can't elect a woman because we have that narrative, and we have that puritanical thing. Women should be in the home. Remember what J.D. Vance said about she was she didn't have any children, so obviously she was a something or other, catless.
Catless
woman or whatever the heck. And all that kind of thing that's been going on for many more years than 4.
That's for sure.
So, it's a problem, and it's going to be a problem.
Okay, we're segueing perfectly into the next question, but I'll get right to the bottom line of the question. It's just, what about the white women who decided that they would rather vote for Trump, who had done all these horrible things to women and continues to spout off the horrible stuff to women? Pat, why did the white women vote for Trump as opposed to one of their own?
Remember, part of the narrative is that if you're a naughty girl, you'll get yours. If your skirt's too short, or if you are flirtatious, or if you get drunk, or all those kinds of things, you're fair game for somebody to take advantage of you, men to take advantage of you. But it's not going to be me, because I'm a good girl. I bring my husband his martinis when he comes home from work, and I take care of the kids. And so I think that's part of it. It's not this is not about me, because my husband treats me just fine. I do what he says, and he, that kind of thing. So I just think that's why I think nobody ever thinks the monkey in the barrel is going to be them.
So it's Ozzie and Harriet continuing into the first quarter of the 21st century. Is that what you're saying?
Leave it to Beaver. Yep, all those.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, Doug. Women,
Well,
white women.
I totally agree with Pat's assessment. I think that, and the other piece of it is, one of the ways Trump's people and the Republicans generally explain why everything is so bad in their view, is because we have to go back to that golden age, the 1950s, right? Now, it wasn't so golden. Those of us who are old enough to have been there. But so what we have to do, we should then adopt all the values of that time, and then we'll have a wonderful world again. So male chauvinism, racial prejudice, I mean, you go down the line, right? If we go back to those values, the world will be a better place and everything will be wonderful. It's a simplistic, unrealistic message, but it sells. I mean, it does.
Sold this time, that's for sure.
It sure has.
Well,
you got to remember, people don't like to think. I mean, the other problem with the Democratic rhetoric is, frankly, it's too sophisticated.
Mm-hmm.
The average American doesn't want to say, well, it's a complicated issue. You got to consider A and B, and how do you... No, they don't want that. They want somebody to say, this is what you do. That's what looks like strength.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump is great at that.
Yes.
Donald Trump is always definitive. Now, he's definitive in the total opposite way today that he was yesterday.
Yeah.
But at any given moment, he's definitive, and people love it.
I agree.
All right, sticking with women here. What happened to the reproductive rights wave that was supposed to help the Democrats? There were 10 ballot initiatives, and 7 of them passed, protecting constitutional rights for women in those states. It did not pass in Florida because the 57% who voted for it, it was not enough to get over the 60% threshold. The two other failures occurred in Nebraska and South Dakota. Of the 7 that did pass, 4 were from blue states, 3 were red. Is this issue one that the anti-fascist organizers should rely on in future elections? Or is it also becoming a moot point after seeing where the public went this past election? Doug, I would have thought...
I would have too. But I think there's a couple of things there. One is, clearly the majority of people support abortion rights. I don't think it's the top issue for the majority of people. I think that's the issue. So that they can support an initiative for abortion rights and still vote for Donald Trump, right?
So you're still talking women here.
Anybody, men and women. I mean, a lot of men are pro-abortion rights, right?
Right.
They don't want to have to support the kids they unintentionally produce. So, they're for abortion rights too. It's just that it's not the top issue for most people. And I think that's the problem. And I don't think the Democrats should drop the issue, but I don't think they can make it the centerpiece of their campaign. I think say it, move on, and talk about some other stuff. Because
it can be a main issue, but not the only main issue.
Not the only main issue. I don't, because it's not going to sell. It's not going to persuade people over against other kinds of things. So if a person who's thinking, rightly or wrongly, that their husband's going to have a better income under Donald Trump, or you're going to be able to have abortion rights and not have a better income, they're going to go for the better income.
Mm-hmm. Is that right, Pat? Is that how you see it?
Well, I think we're back to this whole issue of how does it affect me personally? one of the things that's happened with the pill, the abortion pill thing, is that it's a lot easier now for many people to be able to access abortions than it was when it was all physical, procedure. So that, I think that has some impact. But I also think that what you see in your paycheck every week and how far it stretches makes a difference. I mean, you see it all the time. It affects everybody except Elon Musk, I guess. But so I do think that is the thing. And it's very hard. It's very hard for people to see that they have, when the cost of things goes up, that's what you see. You don't necessarily see that, oh, I got a little bit more money in my paycheck as well. And when you go to I bought eggs yesterday, $7.29 a dozen. And that same brand that I've been buying for a while was $5.99 for a long time. I noticed that stuff, but I'm fortunate that I don't worry about it. But there was a time when I did, and there was certainly a time in the 50s when my mother did, because she couldn't afford groceries in the 50s because she was a single parent, so it's not a new problem either. But I don't know. I believe that I think people look out for what they can see themselves.
Right.
What they can see, yeah, by looking at the number at the cashier's check at the grocery store, they're not necessarily looking at their own paycheck. Because that's what makes them matter anyway. Low information voting is a phenomenon that is hard to measure. How many Trump voters do you think didn't know that he is a convicted felon, an adjudicated rapist, and a fraudulent businessman who led a treasonous insurrection last time? Or just didn't care he committed those crimes? Or, like what Doug said earlier, worse yet, like and admire him because of those acts. Pat, why did people who knew he was a convicted felon decide that he was their man?
Because he was unjustly accused. Didn't you listen to him? They were out to get him. I mean, because he's such a powerful man, they're afraid of him, so they were out to get him. And I think people believe that. I had one guy complain because something was coming out, that what Trump's doing now, and he complained that Biden didn't tell him enough about what he was doing and what he did well so that he would vote for somebody besides Trump. I mean, low information is not even, there's just no information voting. It's all emotional voting. And there's no, they believe that. They believe it, that everybody went after him just because he's, I don't know, so.
He's God.
Messiah,
go after God like they did Jesus,
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. All right, Doug, low information, no information.
I think the truth is, I think there are probably people who didn't know, but I think the vast majority of people didn't care. And I think that the excuse they buy, this notion, what Pat said, that, they just went after him. But, the interesting logic in all of this is that if you commit, it's sort of like if I'm stopped for a speeding ticket, it's not a valid argument for me to say, you pulled me over, but a whole bunch of other people have been speeding and you didn't pull them over. That's probably true, but it's irrelevant. I was speeding. I broke the law. So the fact, I have no doubt that if Trump were not a political figure and he was just a quiet, corrupt businessman, he probably would have gotten away with this and it never would have come to trial. That's probably true, but that's irrelevant. He committed the crimes. But what did Joe Biden do with his son? Right? He pardoned him because they were going after him. But we all know that Hunter is slimy as can be and committed those crimes. So, and I think that's what there's the hypocrisy again. I think people say, yeah, Trump's a slime, but everybody in politics is a slime. So what the heck? I think we.
Whenever the Hunter Biden thing comes up, I always like to compare two different crimes. Hunter Biden's crime was to put on a form that he wasn't a drug addict, and Kyle Rittenhouse's crime was he ended up killing these people with an AK-47. Okay, Carl Rittenhouse, he got off. He was found not guilty because of the way the judge manipulated that trial. Hunter Biden had to, anyway, that's
Yeah, no, I mean, I
what
think you're
I'm
right
twisted
about that. And I do think Hunter Biden never would have been brought to trial if he wasn't the son of,
Right.
but by the same logic as we're talking about with Trump, he committed the crime. And
That crime, yes.
right. So, and so to pardon him after he said he wasn't going to pardon him, by the way, he talked about looking like a hypocrite. I think Biden looks terrible in this situation. And it just takes all the credibility. It just supports all the Trump people who said, sure, you let your son
Yeah,
off.
but Trump, if we're comparing Trump and Biden, Trump said he wasn't going to pardon these ones that actually assaulted the cops on January 6th, but they all got pardoned.
I know. I'm not saying that believe me, I think, you don't have to convince me that Trump's a horrifically horrible human being. I'm just saying that this is why people can sit there with a straight face and say, I don't care that he's a criminal.
Cherry picking.
They're all criminals.
Basically cherry picking the things that Biden did wrong, but completely ignoring all the shit that Trump did wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And the belief that they're all crooked, that everybody in politics is crooked. And so at least Trump is open about it, right? I mean, I think that's how they think. I really do. I think they actually respect him as being less of a hypocrite because he just is right out there doing it. He's
doing what he said he's going to do.
Doing what he says he's going to. All the horrible, hateful. I mean, I think the man is beyond despicable. But if you're trying to get inside the head of the people who support him, I think you've got to think about how they're viewing it. And they are so cynical. They are so convinced that everybody in politics is rotten. And that's why he can get away with this whole deep state thing. The entire government is terrible. Let's just get rid of them all, right? That's ridiculous. But it sells. It sells.
Yeah. Drain the swamp by firing all the inspector generals.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. We did a whole episode a while back, which Doug participated in, called Group Dynamics, because it is my belief that our status and how we function in the groups we belong to have more to do with our behaviors than any other aspect of living. The contemporary political term to describe this particular phenomenon is tribalism. Political parties are essentially tribes. This goes back to the previous question of low information voters. How many people do you think voted for Trump because their friends and neighbors were Trump supporters and they just wanted to go along to get along? And how much does the culture wars influence this particular phenomenon? Doug?
Well, I think there is a lot of that, and frankly, some on both sides. I mean, there's a whole bunch of voters who just are part of their world and they go with it. But I think that, I think it's all how you get to define the tribe. There once was a time when Americans defined the tribe as all Americans. And that was a different time. Mm-hmm. Now, the tribe is this group of Americans against that group of Americans. And that's where the shift has come. And it gets back to what Pat was saying earlier about the fact that people don't talk to each other anymore. They just get entrenched in their tribe, in their little group, and draw the battle lines. And that's the end of it. There's no sense of compromise. There's no sense that we're a diverse society and we're not all going to get our way. We're going to have to compromise. I mean, that used to be what statesmanship meant. And that's gone. So I think the problem is the tribe has gotten smaller rather than being the community that's America.
Well, the tribes that exist are really polarized.
Yes.
And outside the greater group, which is the American nation.
Yeah.
Okay, Pat. Tribalism. I voted for Trump because my neighbor has a big Trump sign in his yard, and I don't want to piss him off, and I don't want him to know that I don't agree with everything Trump said. So I'm just going to tell him, and I'm going to go ahead and do it. I'm going to vote for Trump. Is that the way you see it up there in Matsu land?
I'm not sure people necessarily admitted, but people are certainly afraid to put signs up that are against what the neighbor has up. People are, I heard somebody say the other day that, oh, if she started writing letters to the editor or complaining about things, they'd probably come in her house and, arrest her. So they've really, they've gotten people afraid enough of all this stuff that, well, it's like your tribe, the people in the old, tribes attacking other tribes for taking their territory, for stealing their women or whatever the kind of thing was going on. I mean, it's the same kind of thing, but it's a little different dynamic, I think, than physically taking somebody's property. They're trying to just take control. It's about power. It's about power.
Pat, do you feel that the Democrats up there are intimidated by the Republican tribe?
I think there are people that are. I don't think it's. So remember, in Alaska, there are more people that say they're nonpartisan and undeclared than Democrats and Republicans put together.
Yeah, that was me when I was up there.
So it's really difficult to generalize and say I don't think the Democrats are afraid of the Republicans, but I think there's people that have the same kinds of values, you might say, as we hope Democrats have, that are afraid of the Republicans and are afraid to speak out, afraid to put a sign in their yard, afraid to write a letter to the editor, afraid to do things like that, because they're, again, back personal. I'm afraid for myself. I'm not going to run for office because they're going to threaten my children and my husband. I'm not going to run for office because they're going to, spray paint my house, or they're going to shoot me, or, that kind of stuff. So
yeah, so people with that fear really aren't active Democrats. They're just like people.
There are active Democrats, but not that, it's really hard, and we really are having difficulty getting younger people to be, and in Matsu, they're just becoming, I mean, the assembly and our representatives and even our city councils are becoming so
MAGA?
Yeah, just power hungry, controlling, yeah.
But using MAGA tactics to get their base solid. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Transgender is a category that emerged prominently in this election. While trans participation in the other gender sports programs is extremely rare and totally in the realm of the local school districts where it may occur, there is no doubt that it was a major focus of the Trump campaign. Look no further than the MAGA outrage raised about an Algerian Olympic boxer, Imani Khalif, a biological female, accused by the outraged of being a man. It is like Trump as our only weapon that can protect us from the trans invasion. Is that how you saw it? How effective is this messaging in determining the final election results? Pat, you were nodding.
This whole thing is so ridiculous. Why are people afraid of trans people? Trans people have always existed. I mean, why are people afraid? I guess, again, people are afraid it's going to happen to them. And if it happens to them, that would be bad. And, my daughter's fiance was trans. He had lots of trans friends. One was murdered. Do they honestly think people choose to be trans so they can be harassed by other people? I mean, really, do they think people choose to be trans so they can look under the thing at girls in the dressing room? I mean, people don't choose to be trans. People just either are. It's like being redheaded, I guess. Being left-handed.
It's a biological thing.
It is.
Yeah. What was your question? Why were they afraid to? Why did they have to go after trans? Or how did you phrase your last question? Because I want to throw that right at Doug. why are people afraid of the trans? Was that your
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, I
Doug,
think
why are people afraid of the trans?
Uh, I can't help revert to my psychiatric background now, because to me, everything Pat said is 100% right. It's a ridiculous argument, both because trans people are no threat to anybody, and frankly, they represent such a small portion of the population. What difference does it make, right? So why was that message so effective? And I think my own take on that is that I there's been a lot written in the psychological literature on that one of the most powerful things to evoke strong emotion in people is to trigger a sense of disgust.
Yeah.
And I think years ago, homosexuality used to do that for people.
mm,
Now it doesn't because we've all, the society has shifted. But I think for the typical guy on the street, when they think about altering their genitals, when they think about being castrated, to be very direct, it gives them a sense of horror and disgust. And I think that by pounding on the trans, you get this association that the Democrats are disgust. They support disgusting things. I think it's a visceral, irrational, as Pat says, there's no logic to this whatsoever. I mean, it's absolutely illogical. So how can it stir up that kind of intense emotion? There has to be something very irrational at the heart of it. That's my theory.
yeah.
And until society goes through the evolution that we've gone through with being gay,
That's only partially done though, buddy.
only partially.
That's only-
Well, what I will say is, I think even the people who oppose being gay now, it doesn't generate visceral disgust the way it did 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Okay.
Sure.
Trans still does. And I think that's why if they could make such a powerful rhetorical message out of something that is so inconsequential, so absolutely inconsequential.
And inhumane.
And yeah, totally,
Yeah.
totally. But once you feel disgust towards something, you no longer have to be considerate of that person anymore because they are just disgusting.
That's right.
Right. Yes. You just have to keep pushing the issue.
Right.
Well, it's
Because there's
kind of what they did with Jewish people, right?
yeah,
That was what they did.
You
They
dehumanize them.
dehumanize people.
Yeah.
And now they're rounding up the immigrants that they've dehumanized.
And well, there again. So you want to make immigrants disgusting. They're going to eat Fido.
Mhm.
They're going to eat your pet dog, right? Now, that was a ridiculous accusation. Everybody knows, but it evokes disgust. It evokes that sense of disgust. And that is powerful at just a irrational, and particularly for the unthinking voter who's just reacting viscerally. Man, that's powerful.
Even though it was a proven lie,
Doesn't
the
matter.
fact that it was a lie,
You plant the
really is
idea.
important as the disgust.
You now have the image of that immigrant fricasseeing your dog,
Yeah.
right? That's images in your head now. And it's powerful.
And apparently it's all cured because we're not talking about it anymore.
Yeah, right. No problem now. That's right. That's right. All gone. But it's sure served its purpose. Again, disgust. I mean, there's the social philosopher Nussbaum, Martha, I think Margaret or Martha, brilliant woman, wrote a whole book on the power of disgust as a concept in our society. Very powerful thing. And if you utilize that, oof.
Sure worked this time.
Sure did.
How much is the media, print TV, and internet responsible for this election's outcome? Please cite some examples if you have any. Anything that the media struck you, Doug, as far as something that you think had a profound effect going the way it did?
Well, yeah, I mean, I assume we're talking about the mainstream media now, not that's, the other group.
What, the MAGA QAnons? No, the
Yeah, yeah,
mainstream.
we're not
All
talking
right.
about that. We're talking about, the New York Times. Yeah, I think in a way they echoed, and I don't think they caused it, but I think they reflected again. Um, this I think the Democrats made a terrible mistake and that the media went with it. That if you stressed what a threat to democracy this guy was, what a horrible human being he was, how how his no justice, he's a fascist, which all of which is true, I think, without doubt. But I don't think that sells. And so they were emphasizing that and emphasizing that, and the average American guy or out there, they could care less. And I think it just made it look irrelevant. It made it look like they didn't understand what the real issues that were bothering people were. And I think that was the big mistake. I think that they would pound it on that, they pounded on that, they pounded on that. And I don't think people cared.
Yeah, you just said that,
Long game.
you can pound the truth, but the truth is not a relevant
No.
aspect of it. Okay, Pat, the media, print, TV, and internet. How responsible are they for this outcome?
Well, I do think, and I think there's as much to be said about what isn't said as what is said in the media. And I think that the fact that every time Biden made a misstep or said something that was, I don't know, they jumped on it. But Trump has word salad all the time, cannot say anything seldom says anything that makes sense. I mean, it just seems like there was an imbalance on pointing out the fact these were both old men, folks. They're both old men. And but I don't know.
Well, look at the first debate, where Biden and Trump got together. Trump's lies were just like pouring out like an avalanche, and Biden had made some goofiness.
Yeah.
But the huge news stories after that debate was how Biden was just like not up for it,
Yeah, exactly. Well, Biden was actually running the country. He was actually running the country and pretty competently, really, I would argue. We were, things were moving along. It was hard to see. It's always hard to see when things move slowly, but he was running the country and Trump was just doing what he does.
running his mouth was what.
Yeah,
Right.
running his mouth and lying. But I felt like that. I felt there was unfair. I mean, if they wanted to say that stuff, they should have been saying it about Trump too.
Sure, yeah.
And they weren't. So
Yeah.
My initial thought the day after the election is that the American people can no longer claim the mantra of being decent, fair, freedom-loving believers in individual rights. These results said to me that to be free means having the freedom to dictate to others how to live, behave, and think. Individual rights can belong to people who agree with me, but never to those I do not like. Has the American experiment finally ascended into the Orwellian dystopia described in Animal Farm in 1984? Pat, you read both those books, right?
yeah,
Animal Farm in 1984.
been a day or two, but yes.
Yeah, for all of us. But
Yeah.
have we descended into that dystopia now, or are we still like not there yet?
I think we're talking two different things, though, when we talk about Orwell's things and the whole idea of us considering ourselves decent, fair, and good people. As long as you agree with me, I think that's our Puritan underpinnings coming through. We want religious freedom for ourselves, but you guys know you need to, go along with us. I think that narrative's been around for a long time. I do think this whole idea that lying is okay and all that stuff is kind of an unusual thing, since you remember the whole story about, and it wasn't the truth, about Washington, I cannot tell a lie, I did cut down the cherry tree. I mean, that was that wasn't even a real thing that happened, but we revered that as being, this is truly American. We revere the John Wayne heroic stuff and all those things. So we like
That
to
was
think
honesty.
ourselves
Yeah, it
that
was
way.
honesty. We revered honesty, is what you're saying, because of what Washington not lying about the cherry tree. Honest Abe Lincoln, that was his nickname.
That's right. Yeah. And that seems to have gone by the wayside. I agree. What is the truth is, I mean, the truth isn't the truth, and that, I mean, so that we are in that vein right now, is that nobody believes anything to be true except the lies, I guess. So I don't know how. I'm worried about our children more than anything else. I'm worried about the messages that our children are getting about the way the world is, the way they should be. And we're doing at the museum, we have a display of student art that we do every year. We have a little competition, and they write up a little bit about what they believe. And so many of them are angry and frustrated. And there's that side. And then there's the side of the kids that are saying, oh, it's fluffy and love. And, but I really worry about the kids and what they're seeing and what they're thinking and what they're believing as a result. And that's my big thing right now. I guess we should all read Animal Farm and start quoting it again.
Yeah, because that's what they started to do at the end, as the pigs were taking power, was started lying to the rest of the animals to get them to comply.
Yep.
Speaking of art, your background is just gorgeous. I just wanted to mention that.
Oh,
If the viewers haven't noticed, when Pat talks, there's some really nice art behind you.
Sure is.
Okay, Doug. Orwellian dystopia.
Yeah, I think Pat hit the nail on the head. I mean, I think and I share with you, Pat, that I think the biggest worry we have right now, in spite of everything, is for the next generation and the values that are being sent to them. And I think, and again, I think part of it is that people have decided everybody in public life has been lying to them for a long time.
Yeah.
I think there's that, again, the sense of having exposed hypocrisy, and nobody's honest, so don't even pretend. And I think what's taken the place of honesty and those kind of things being admired, it's sheer power. I think power has become the dominant thing. So if you can do it, whether you're violating laws, whether you're violating rights, whether if you can take over Greenland from some country we're much bigger than, hey, why don't you do it? If you go take the Panama Canal back, why not? I think it reminds me very much at the height of the Athenian Empire, which was a supposed democracy. But they were brutal, and their official position was, we can brutalize other city-states because we can. We're big, if you read Thucydides, we're big, we're powerful, and city-states saying, well, this isn't fair what you're doing. So what? They don't even pretend it's fair. It's like, we have the power, and if you had the power, you'd be doing it to us. So we have the power, we're going to do it to you. And I think that's the world we're in. And in the modern world, of course, power is highly synonymous with money. So I think what we're really moving to is just a plutocracy where a small cadre of extraordinarily wealthy people are going to have extremely undue influence. I mean, just look at that front row at the inauguration, right?
Right.
Billionaire after billionaire after billionaire, right?
It was the working people, though.
That's right, the working people, right? So I mean, but that's what people admire now. That is not Honest Abe, but somebody who, by hook or crook, doesn't matter how, acquired a tremendous amount of power, money. How you do it doesn't matter. If you're clever enough to pull it off, you're a winner. It's Trump's message all along. He doesn't like losers. If you're a winner, you're a good guy.
He won't lose. He refuses to.
He refuses, and if he does, he just denies that he lost. So,
Yeah.
But I think and I agree. I think the real problem in all this is I look at my little grandkids now. I worry so much about, I was just talking to my daughter about this very issue the other day. How do you teach them to be decent human beings and to value that in a world where our big leaders are such, just power grabbing, disreputable people. It's real scary.
What I'm most afraid of is how my granddaughters are going to be treated by the boys, because
That's
the
right.
message that we're delivering to
Absolutely.
the boys is not healthy either.
No, it's not. You're
The whole
absolutely
toxic masculinity thing that is, they've been sold that bill of goods that men are being sidelined and they're not as important anymore, and they should be, When I first got married, my husband had been married before, and he said in his first marriage, he really felt like he had to be the breadwinner and he had to do this and he had to do that. And she kind of went along with that. And she was very much better spending the money than earning the money. And then married me, and he was really kind of happy when I earned more money than he, thought that was good. So,
Yeah, I think that works out well too. I mean, my comfort level here in retirement is mainly due to the fact that she worked all those years and contributed to this retirement. Pat and Doug, thank you so much for participating in this very depressing topic, but we had to analyze it, and I think you two did a great job doing that. So all you out there, yeah, all you out there in Cyberland, thanks for watching. Until next time, bye now. All right,
bye-bye.
good job, folks. I mean, that's what I was hoping.
Well, it was a tough one. I mean,
It
that tough thing to discuss, isn't it?
Yeah,
but you don't know the answers. I mean, the answers are so complex.
They are.
It is. You don't know what's in everybody's head. And people bring something different. Everybody brings something different to the table, and they're
absolutely.
Blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. So.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. But I just think it's incumbent too. I do think those on our side of the political spectrum run the risk of just dismissing it as those people are stupid and unthinking.
I don't think they're stupid at all.
Yeah, and I think we have to be so careful to really try to get in their heads and say, why does this seem reasonable from their point of view?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I didn't want to call anybody stupid tonight. I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't. I wouldn't.
No, but I think that I think it's easy to. It would be very easy to explain why we lost by that kind of a view that people aren't, don't get the issues, they're not thinking clearly, they're not. There's some real resentment.
Things out there, and as I said, I really think here's where I think the Democrats have failed mostly. I think we have not examined our rhetoric for 40 years and how we communicate with people. The Republicans have had a plan for 40 years about doing this. We have not.
That's right. And they've been actually, if you look at, I mean, they have taken over all the state houses. I mean, they've been gaining ground for 40 years.
That's right.
And the Democrats
family values, all that.
Yeah, and the Democrats have been sitting on their hands. The other, from my point of view, that the Democrats have is that it kind of began with the civil rights movement, and I mean, God, that had to happen. That was so necessary. But the Democrats easily get into a position where it sounds like they're pitting one group of the population against another. Yeah. Minorities against majorities, rich against poor. And it's easy to come, I'm so struck. I mean, so much in this country is means tested. And if you I was just talking to a guy from Denmark the other day and saying, they're paying 70+% income tax rates. Okay. And they're the happiest. They love their government, right? Why? They love it because when there's a benefit that is given by the government, you get that benefit whether you're a poor guy or a rich guy. If you're going to get a free college education, the millionaire's kid gets a free college education. The people on the margin get a free college education. Healthcare, same thing. It's a gift to everybody. And so everybody feels part of this group. It's not what happens in this country.
Not at all, no.
And I got to tell you, I just had a recent experience. all my working life, I played the maximum into Medicare, right? 'Cause made enough. Once I retired, once I hit 65 and got on Medicare, I pay higher rates than than the baseline because my income is higher.
Yep.
Okay, I suck that up. This last year, when I closed my practice, I sold my office.
Oh,
Okay, so I had to pay capital gains tax on the office. As a result, my Medicare premiums this year went up $7,000
That's
because
just
my
going to be one
income.
year, though, right? I
What?
mean, that's just from the capital gains of the 1 year, right?
Yeah, but for a year, I am being penalized
Yeah,
$7,000.
you are. You
Enough to
are.
make me a Republican. I mean, you sort of say, I've paid the max all along. I've been paying more all along. And okay, I sold my office, true enough. But there's something wrong with a system that's ready to pounce on me at that point for an extra seven. Yeah. And I can understand the visceral reaction. Now, when I step back and think about it, okay, I can say I earned that money. I did sell the office. Okay, I get it. I understand the law. But I can understand how easy it is to just say, this system is really rigged. It's us against them. And I think the Democrats do that so much. They have programs for this group, for that group. And all of it is good, I think. But I think the way it's presented, it tends to be divisive. I think it really tends to be divisive.
Well, you're fractionalizing the
You're
population.
fractionalizing the population. I think the rhetoric with the way uh, you know, DEI has been presented.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
whatever's happened with DEI was wrong. First of all, labeling it DEI was wrong.
right.
Secondly, trying to give people lectures on how they should behave is wrong. It never works. We know it doesn't work. I mean, we've tried it for years with a variety of things. People just sit through that stuff and they never change because they
It
don't
doesn't.
know how it impacts them until it does. And
Right.
then they pay attention and then there's nothing they can do. And, it's,
But I don't think that's what they're bitching about. I think they're bitching about because too many women and too many black people got into positions of power. And that's what
I'm sure they are.
they're
Well,
angry
sure.
about.
But the other way of looking at it, my brother, who worked for a big corporation all his life and middle management, and almost he's the only one in that whole group of his friends that's a Democrat. And they all voted for Trump. And every single one of them, when asked, told a story about how they lost a promotion they were more qualified for to a minority, to a woman. Now, maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but that's their perception, and it's part of this. You're taking care of that guy at my expense. That's the way it feels. And the Democrats need to find a way of talking about these issues that doesn't sound like that.
well, the question for anybody would be, did you ever get a promotion that a woman or a black person didn't get? Because nobody notices when
Nobody
they're the
notices.
one.
Nobody notices. But I think the problem is I personally just don't think you can legislate rapidly corrections to past social injustices. You can try to legislate to stop the injustices. But if you try to go back and make it right,
Oh, you can't.
you're going to piss a lot of people off. And I think that's what has happened. I think
Well,
that.
as the only woman who has ever been the principal of Palmer High School, which is celebrating its 90th year, that is not right.
You're right. You're absolutely right. But the main goal should be to make sure it's more equitable in the future, not to
That's right.
make
That's
up
right.
for the past injustice. You can't do it.
Right. And I'm not saying, maybe people did think it was an injustice that I was chosen at that time. But if we just look at the numbers and the balance, we have half the people of this country are women. A third of the people of this country are, I don't know whatever.
Yeah.
it just should be represented in what we have.
Right.
And to
I totally,
assume that because someone was chosen and you thought you were more qualified, we do that. We assume that somebody else was promoted because of that versus maybe they
maybe they
were.
deserved it, right? Maybe they deserved it.
Maybe they were the best qualified, you
Right.
know.
But we need to really think about how we do it so that we try to make that as clear as it humanly can be done. That it's whereas I think it's been done very heavy-handedly so that people can, when you start announcing quotas of how many minorities are going to
I
have,
know.
it just turns
I
people
agree.
off. And even
I
though
agree.
I think there's no doubt the injustices have been horrible and,
They
and
have.
they need to be corrected, but you can't do it this way. There's going to be too much backlash, and eventually it's just going to swing, and that's what we're in now. It's going to undo all of that because,
Well, we got to figure something out because white supremacy is not working either as far
oh
as
no,
advancing our society.
absolutely,
Look at who the cabinets people are. Look at who
oh
the
my
cabinet
God,
people are. I mean, we got total inept people who
that's
will
right,
not be able to do the job. And that's a DEI hire.
right. But you
Yeah.
see, I think his goal is to have people who can't do the job because
Oh, I think so too.
he
He
wants
don't want to
government
do
to
the job.
collapse. You
He
know,
wants to prove that government doesn't work. That's what
that's
he's
right.
saying.
That's right.
Yeah. So
So it's a sad time, and I'm. It's just how do the Democrats finally look at their rhetoric and regroup and do it in a way that's
I've had this problem in Alaska for a while because I've been saying to them, I've been saying to us, because I'm them, I'm them.
right.
So I've been saying to us, we need to come up with what is it believe, and we need to say it. We just need to keep saying it. And like that's what they do. They say it and they say it and they say it. We believe in all children. We don't think they chose to be redheaded. We don't think they chose to be left-handed. We
Right.
don't think they chose to be trans. So let's not punish them. Let's try to make sure everybody gets a chance to.
Yeah.
Pat, you've been saying that probably your entire life.
I've been saying
Okay.
it for quite a number of years.
Yes, yes. And you've been a fixture in the Democratic institutional
Yep.
infrastructure for a long time.
Right.
But
they don't listen
the message has not landed.
No, it
and
hasn't.
Basically, what I'm saying now is that the vehicle in which the message is distributed into the consciousness of the electorate up there needs to find a better vehicle.
I agree.
Yeah. And that's the real challenge. How do you do that?
That is.
I mean, I think we all agree what should happen. I mean, I think the three of us are on the same page. It's just, my God, why we're so ineffectual.
Yeah. And I do think that the Republicans hired somebody to help them to do the messaging. And I don't know that we ever have.
Right.
And I've said it to Alaska, but like I said, if you knock on doors and if you do that, they use everybody does this thing. It doesn't work. Doesn't work. Raise more money.
Good.
Yeah. Well, I also think the Democrats, and I think it's the problem that more educated people have, frankly, that you think if your argument is logically correct,
oh, I know,
it's going to carry the day. Well, guess what? It's not.
Right.
And I think the Democrats have had wonderfully logical arguments all this time. Nobody's listening,
Especially this campaign.
Yeah, but I think this is a culmination. I think Pat's right. I think it's been 40 years of this. And I think that this is just it's come home to roost.
Yeah.
It's finally come home to roost. But
and everybody's going to see it now because everybody's going to feel it. And
right. But it's been happening. It's been happening for, as you say.
But are we going to correct it? This is the big question. Are we going to correct it?
I don't know. We'll have to see, I guess.
But the first step is you got to diagnose it correctly. You've got to figure out why your message isn't landing.
And I don't know what to do. I don't know how to fight it myself. So, I'm trying to find the way, what can I do besides weep and wail and gnash my teeth? I'm not sure letters to the editor help. I don't know. And I'd like somebody to investigate what could help and give me the idea of what I should do, because I don't know. So,
You know what? There are dozens of books that have already been written, but
I
people
know.
think they have the answer, but
Yep.
don't really. They're
Yep.
just selling books.
Sure.
All right, we done here.
Right.
Yeah, we're just going to do a
Try again.
normal one.